All right, we're transitioning into the second worm guard position. We were doing the regular worm guard, now we're doing the ringworm guard. Now a lot of what I'm going to show you grip-wise is going to look familiar because the normal worm guard actually transitions through ringworm guard in most setups. So the ringworm guard is just the very first grip pass. So if we're doing the setup that I was talking about earlier, where I just sit up like this, the first grip pass, this is a ringworm guard. But there aren't as many sweep options from here as there are from the first worm guard that I ever created, this one here. The reason I don't show it first is this is more of like a position that switches between the two sides of the worm guard hemispheres. This side would be the regular worm guard, and I have a lot of attacks that involve tilting and standing up and back takes. If I were to face to the other side, this way, I have my ringworm guard sweeps, which there are a few, and I'm going to show you them. And then to get even deeper into it would be the reverse Della worm guard here, which we'll get into later. The setup here is the same. I'm just sitting up and passing the grip here. Now, the other worm guard, the original worm guard here, gives my opponent a lot of opportunities to stand straight up. He's able to stand and keep his legs underneath him pretty easily if he wants to. Once I start attacking my sweeps and stuff, he may think twice about it and go drop he'll usually drop this knee here to take some pressure off his lower back and things of that nature. So in this situation, my regular worm guard sweeps are not as effective because he has such a solid base. I can't do my basic scissor sweeps. It's a little harder for me to come up into the single leg position because he can drive into me because his foot is there on the ground, giving him solid base. So in these situations, I usually like to switch into ringworm guard, which I'm just having that left hand grip, and my free hand is now the hand that's closest to the worm guarded leg here, like this. So what's nice about this is if I don't want him to be standing, go ahead and stand up for me. If I don't want him to be standing, I want him to be on his knees to do some of the ringworm guard sweeps, it's pretty easy to force him down just with a little bit of collar control. I just pull on his collar and I can fall backwards, so my entire weight is pulling down on his upper back because the ringworm itself is pulling at his lower back with the nature of the lapel, and then his upper back and posture is being pulled down with the collar here, like this. So now, for this one, I don't usually want to have my foot hanging past his hip. I like to keep it on the hip for this because this is such a distance controlling version of the worm guard. If he's getting too close to me, I can push him away. If he's getting too far away, I can pull him in. Not just with the collar, but with the grip on the knee itself. It's a very strong control here. What's also nice about it is this is the position where you can defend a lot of the counters, like him stepping over my foot. If he wants to try and step over my foot, I would just go and hand fight the position. So if he tries to reach, I just grip, pull his sleeve, and reset the position until I feel comfortable again. And then of course, if he gets too focused on the counters, I would switch back into the original worm guard like this and tilt myself all the way around and start attacking my tilt sweeps. So I have a variety of attacks. So remember, the worm guard should be fluid. It's not like you pick one of them and you get really good at that one. You need to use all three. So this is just the ringworm guard. From here you can get to the other worm guards. Sort of like the hub position of the two. Just like all of the worm guard positions and lapel guard positions I show, I usually start with something a little more simple and work up into the trickier stuff. This is a sweep that I used to defeat Braulio Estima at the World Pro in 2014 or 15, I'm not sure which one. And it was the first time I'd ever done the sweep in competition, but it's a really good basic sweep when someone's expecting some sort of spinning back take that a lot of the worm guard attacks use. This one's a super straight to the point, very simple, and can take guys by surprise who are really focused on not letting you get underneath them or move around them with the rotational control that the worm guard provides. So you can set up the worm guard however you want. Let's say we're in the position and I just sit up and take the grip. So we're going to assume that he's dropped to one knee because we've attacked him with a bunch of other worm guard positions, or he's just tired and now he's here down on one knee. Okay? What I'm going to do is there's a weird functionality of the ringworm guard that is very not very known, and that is the fact that I can sort of unhinge the position. So right now I'd be totally locked in and I'd have his knee tight and trapped here. But just by pushing my hand down away from his knee, I can control the slack that the lapel is giving me, and in turn, move my foot up and down his thigh. So I can move it down low to his knee or keep it up tight in his thigh or in his hip area, depending on what my goal is. So my goal for this sweep is to break his base and force him to get tilted over this way. So right now he has base with his knee and he has base with his hand. So if I were to just try and tilt him over, nothing's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is, before I loosen the lapel, which you can see me doing here and sliding my foot down, this motion is important because we're going to use this later in the sweep. Before I do any of that, I need to take my right hand and grip anything on his arm. I can grip at the elbow here. I can grip behind his elbow. I can pull him forward and make him plant with his hand a little bit and then grip the sleeve. It doesn't really matter. Most of the time, I'll just be here, wait for their arm to get kind of close, and hug their elbow to my armpit. This is the easiest way to do it. I just get a strong elbow hug here. But whatever you can take. If you get the sleeve, that works just as good. Let's just say we got the elbow. We pull it into our arm here like this. Chances are he's going to be kind of trying to posture up and pull that arm back. As he's doing this, I'm going to loosen the lapel. So I have the arm trapped under my armpit. I'm going to loosen the lapel so my foot can slide down to his knee. That's all that's happening here. Once my foot is slid down to his knee like this, the next step is very simple. I still have control over his upright leg, the leg that has its foot on the mat and his knee is in the air. I'm pulling that to me, keeping it tight. I'm hugging the elbow tight to me as well. And now all I do is extend my leg away. And look what happens. His base is slowly crumbled. He has nothing to base off of. He's desperately clinging to my left collar to maintain his balance. I just keep extending, boom, until he flattens. So I've effectively swept him just by breaking his base with the motion of stretching his elbow away from his knee and stretching that out. Again, put the other knee up, please. Thank you. An example with the sleeve, it's the same thing. I slide my foot down, pull the sleeve, and kick the knee. Even if his elbow hits, that's fine. All it takes is just a little bit more of a pull for myself to tilt him. Once I'm here and I've actually swept him, we find ourselves in kind of an awkward position if you don't know what to do. So I've swept him here. He's tilted to his side. I have the lapel behind his knee like this, as you can see. I'm going to keep this for now. I don't want to just let go of everything and get up. Of course, I could just sweep him and just come on top. And then he's going to play whatever guard and I'm going to do whatever pass. But there's a little bit more of an efficient way to make use of this grip that we have already. Because once you sweep a guy, the chances are they're going to go buck wild trying to get back up on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this hand underneath his elbow and drive my armpit to his armpit here. Once I pinned that, then I can let go of the lapel and solidify the sweep into a pass rather than just a sweep. It always makes sense to sweep into a position where you can pass easily without much effort, and this is one of those situations. I'm here, have the elbow, kick the knee, tilt, hold this. I'm going to sit up and bring my arm underneath, and then free the position. So there's a position that's super strong for sweeping called the Deep Della X. Guys like JT Torres and Nicholas Margali are super good at this position, but it can be difficult to set up sometimes because it requires sort of a weird angle on the sleeve, and I found a way to incorporate it into the ringworm guard that makes it a lot easier to use. And the position is so powerful itself, but the setup is difficult and requires a lot of coordination and upper body strength and making sure your hips are in the right position. So I'm going to show you the original sweep first. I'm going to show you how to do it from the ringworm guard and why it's so much easier. So Deep Della X is a position that can be done. Go ahead and go stand on your knees for now so it's easier for me. We're just one knee up, this knee here. It requires you to have a cross grip, same side grip on the sleeve and then a De La Riva hook. So it's really easy to have cross grips with the De La Riva and then get a Deep Della X. This is a Deep De La Riva hook. This is a Deep Della X because I'm creating an X with my legs, almost like X guard, except his leg is in between my legs rather than on my shoulder would be X guard. So this is Deep Della X. Super easy to get with a cross grip, but once you're here with the cross grip, you don't really have much sweeping potential because he has so much base there, and it's pretty hard to sweep someone this way with these grips. So it requires you to start the entire position with a sleeve grip here. And what this does is, like, if he's posturing up and pulling this arm away from me like this, it can be pretty difficult to get to my position and like fully extend this arm and then get here and then actually tilt them over. Okay? So having this grip like this, it's like tough. Then all you would do is just tilt them forward, almost in the same sweep we just did with the extension, but we did it without a Della X. So to do the same thing, I just have my ringworm guard. Now, this has the added benefit of forcing them to be on their knee, because it's very difficult to do the sweep if the guy is standing. It's hard to get your leg all the way through. He has super good posture. He's going to be tucking that elbow tight. But if you have ringworm guard, he's almost guaranteed to be on his knee because you've broken him down with your posture control. And then all you have to do to get a Della X is just drive that back leg through. Now from here, it's pretty easy for you to get the sleeve because you've already made him post. And then I'm just going to grab the sleeve itself, like this, here, and start pulling it to me. You can try and maintain your posture as much as you can for now. Now from here, I actually am going to keep my foot on the outside. I don't need to put the X through. I want to keep the lapel grip because I feel it's stronger. Now the sweep is done in the same way. I'm just not pushing on his knee anymore. I'm just pulling and I'm just tilting him forward. I extend both my legs and tilt him forward. Now what this does is it kind of changes the way you finish the position. Now when I let go of the position, once he falls here, I'm going to free my leg and come up on top with my knee pinned over his knee. What were you calling this earlier? The IT band crush?
IT shin roller.
The IT shin roller. My shin is across his IT band driving down. I would keep this grip and slide into a pass here. One more time. Have the ringworm here. I don't necessarily need the grip first. I can put my Della X deep, hold the position tightly here, feet together, and then I can take my time with grabbing the sleeve. Then no matter how much he pulls back and tries to retain his posture, he's super stuck because the lapel around his knee doesn't allow him to posture up straight. So all I have to do is just fall to my right. He almost goes fully inverted before anything even happens. Then from here, I'm just letting go of the lapel itself so my leg can come free. And I'm coming up on top with my knee pressure driving into his IT band. And then I would just slide through to a pass. There is, we talked a little bit about this from the original worm guard position. From the ringworm guard, it's very easy to stand up onto a single leg takedown. Just because of the way your hand is behind their knee and because their posture is so off kilter already, you can just sometimes just stand right up with his leg in your hand and just finish the takedown. This is sort of a pattern interrupt, which should be incorporated into your lapel guard game, because if you spend too much time flat on your back trying to set up all these twisty-turny, grip-oriented positions, sometimes you can get stuck against someone who's really just stoic, and they hold themselves like they're like a boulder and they're just really tight like this. Sometimes as they defend your various grips and off balances and everything, you can really surprise someone just by going from all of this to coming up on a single leg and taking them down. A good example of this, if you need to see a reference, would be my match versus Herbert Santos at the SJJF. I was playing a lot of worm guard and he was backing away a lot. I noticed he was backing away, and so I took advantage of him backing away, realizing I could just come up into a double leg position. And I didn't complete it, but I put him on his butt and he scrambled away. Still a win in my book. And I did win the match, so that's why. So here it is. From the worm guard, super simple. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this. I have my ringworm set up. Now with the ringworm, remember we were talking about how you can control the slack of the wormhole here. It's unique just to ringworm guard. It's very easy to just pull your foot out like this. So in a normal position, if I just had sit-up guard with a lapel pass like this, you can almost guarantee that he's going to be controlling my bottom leg in some way so that I can't just get up. He's going to be holding that so I can't free it. But it's a very common oversight for people. They leave this leg alone because they feel like it's trapped. My foot is trapped in his eyes, but little does he know I can just take my foot out at any time. The bonus of that is to take my foot out, I take it away and out far away from his hand. So I already have a head start on standing up. It's not like I have to just put it on the ground and then re-grip and then go to stand up, where it's kind of telegraphed this motion. He could grab behind my knee or grab anywhere to stop me from getting up, which would be the common defense against something like this. So you can be playing your tilts, trying to off balance him, and then all of a sudden pull your foot immediately into a technical get up. And now I don't even need to use my right hand and re-engage on the single leg. I can literally just stand up with the lapel like this. Now there's a lot of friction behind his knee, so it's very hard for him to posture up as well because the lapel tightens and it makes it difficult for him. Now there's two ways you can finish the takedown itself. You can reach with your arm and control here like this, and then just do the normal running the pipe, where I turn and drop my weight into his hip. Another option, which I actually prefer, is to bring my hand through and pass the grip on the lapel to my other hand, so I can get the hip like this. Getting the hip gives you the option to take the back as well. So if I'm trying to take the guy down and he has good posture and I can't actually finish the single leg, I can always just duck around to the outside of his body with good collar control and start to take the back in another way. I'm not going to go into super detail on single leg finishes and things of that nature, just because we have a lot of technique with lapels to cover. But the key and important thing here is making sure that you can free your foot directly into a technical get up. So don't free it and then put it back and then think, okay, now I'm going to stand up. Once you pull your foot out, it needs to go all the way out directly into the single leg, all in one motion. So I'm here trying to off balance. I'm having trouble. When I realize I want to do this, I put my feet into the proper position. My left foot is planting so I can get right to my technical get up. I probably will let go of his elbow or his collar and post it. And then I loosen my grip, pull my leg all the way out, and then immediately stand up. See how he's a few steps behind me? Even if he has perfect reflexes, he's going to be a couple steps behind you, and that's going to allow you to get a takedown. Because of his posture, it's so bad here, I can easily just reach over his back and drive him down this way as well, or even catch his head like this, pass the grip to my other hand, and get all sorts of weird controls where you can just drive someone down to the mat, taking advantage of the different grips. So this isn't ringworm takedowns, this is ringworm guard. So that's just one example how you can transition into a takedown from there. All right, now that we've gone through a few easier to do sweeps, we're going to do something that requires a little bit of coordination and elevation. So it's going to be an over the head sweep, kind of. So we're going to use a new control that we haven't introduced yet into the ringworm guard, and that's the shin to shin. I think we briefly spoke about it for the normal worm guard as a way to force someone's knee to the mat. With the ringworm guard, it takes on a slightly different role as just a really strong point to elevate someone into the air and bring their center of gravity over the top of you to help you sweep them. This is actually a back take, not a sweep. So kind of weird, but it works. And it looks like this. Disney up, please. We're going to go to the ringworm guard here, and we're going to be utilizing that same posture break with the collar, hand on the collar here. Now, this time, I want to bring his weight up and into the air. So I can't do that with just one leg. So my right leg is engaged, but my left leg's not really doing anything here. It's just chilling. So if I want to elevate him, I need to engage my left leg. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put a shin to shin. To get the shin to shin hook, it's not always as easy as just popping your foot in front. Sometimes you have to create a little space. And the way you do that is just by, you can plant your hand or your elbow and just create a little bit of space, plant your foot, and then scoot your butt back. I know that seems self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised how many people are trying to just get their foot and they're just not quite flexible enough, and all they had to do was just bring their foot back or bring their hips back to get the foot in front, like this. So we originally used this to try and keep his knee underneath my knee so we could attack his back, but in this guard, you don't really have to worry about that. It's more about control. So I'm going to use this to pull his weight over the top of him here. So what this does is it creates sort of a tripping point where his foot is not allowed to stay on the mat the more I pull him forward. So he needs this foot so he can stay away from me. He's basing off the mat, stopping me from pulling him over the top. But when I put my shin to his shin and pull him on top of me, it sticks his foot so that he can't move it, and the rest of his body needs to follow over the top of that foot So now because his foot's bent behind him, he can't extend this leg to pull away from me as easily. So that's what that's done, is it stopped him from being able to escape that way. So I can pull him into the wormhole even tighter here. So another key point, I mentioned this earlier, is my right foot is not past his hip. It's on his hip here. This is very important because the nature of the ringworm has so much strong pulling potential that I need a counter push to keep him away or elevate him up in this case. So I'm pulling with the collar, pulling with my left hand, and I'm going to be tripping his knee over the top of my shin. As I trip him over the top of my shin, his weight starts to come up to the top of me here like this. The more he pulls away, actually, is just going to, anytime he tries to pull away, his hips are going to be extended up a little bit. So as he pulls away, I can elevate like that. So all I'm doing is lifting my left leg's shin, extending it up, and my right foot is pinned on his hip, and my right hand is pulling him over the top of me. So I'm not going to launch him up and all the way over, although that could be a sweep, but you kind of end in a mess, so I don't really like to do that one. What I'm going to do is try and get him up into the air, fully supported on my right leg and my shin. So the more I start from a seated position, the more of a strong pull I can get to get him into the air. So, I scoot in, pull him up like this until he's up and elevated on my foot. Now from here, I can't hold him in the air here forever, so I'm just going to pause for a second. As I elevate his hips up, he's either going to hang onto my collar or post his hands on the mat. If he posts his hands on the mat, it's super easy. If he posts his hand on my collar, it's fine, but I have to do something a little trickier with my head. So first we're going to do it with both hands on the collar, and then I'm going to show you the variation if he posts with his hand on my... The first variation is going to be both hands on the mat. Then I'm going to show you what to do if he posts his hands on my collar. So as I lift him here, I'm going to push with my left hand and drive his knee between my legs. So I'm here, pulling him up into the air. I'm going to push with this hand between my legs. As I do that, I'm extending my right leg up more. What this is going to do is going to rotate his body in midair like this, so his back is going to be exposed to me. My right hand is going to push on his shoulder to help me with that same motion to rotate him. Once I have him rotated, I literally just let go of my left hand and let him drop right into a back take. So this is sort of a misdirection sweep as well. So I'm lifting him. He thinks I'm going to take him all the way over. It forces him to base to stop that action, and then I just rotate his body in midair where he doesn't have any control over himself and take his back. So I have the shin. The hardest part is just overcoming the first lift. Once you get him on top of your knees, it's pretty easy. So I pull and lift. The more I lift, the more weight is going to be on his arms, which makes his lower body lighter. Once I get him in the air, I'm just going to push at the shoulder with my right hand here, pushing. My left hand's going to drive his leg through, and I'm just going to clear my left leg completely. And pull my hand out. And take the seatbelt. This is also sort of a off-balancing move. You don't necessarily have to take the back, but if you're having trouble from this position, it's definitely something you should try to force. Now, the one thing you might run into, come on this side, is if he keeps his hand on your collar. As I try and do this and elevate him up, he's still going to post with his right hand, but it's hard, right? Yeah. So I want to lift him as much as I can. I can still do this, but I have to, the same time that I let go with my left hand, I'm going to push his elbow up and then force him to fall. So it's kind of a free fall back take. You're elevating him into the air, supporting him, and then you just let go of your left side. So I'm pushing with the knee and popping my foot off his shin, and then I had to block the elbow to have him fall right into my lap. So that's how to take the back from the ringworm guard. We're spending a lot of time on these double under escapes and these positions that are holding you back from getting to worm guard and to squid guard and to other lapel guards. Because what good is a lapel guard if you're getting snagged on things before you can even get there? So you may not even realize this yet, but if I just show you worm guard, I just show you squid guard, 90% of the time, you're just going to be fighting your ass off just to get to the position, because all your matches are starting on the feet or on the knees, and you have to fight your way to these positions. So I'm really making sure that your overall lapel knowledge is understood. This is the dirty secrets of the lapel world. You can't just play worm guard. You can't just play squid guard. You have to be a master of all of the lapel-based movements from almost everywhere. Because if there's even one weakness in your game, you might get stuck there and lose to that one guy at the gym that you have a rivalry with. We don't want that. So this next position is another pitfall you may find yourself in as you try and enter into a squid guard position or a worm guard position. I have his lapel like this, and I'm trying to invert for an off balance, and he double unders me again like this here. Now, in this situation, I don't have to bail on the lapel. There are some options here with the lapel that I can keep being offensive. Now, the key is to make sure we have this really tight up into his armpit. A lot of times there's a little bit of secret slack left over, and if you leave that hidden under his armpit, this isn't going to work. So you need to make sure you eliminate all that slack. Now, we're going to be using a lot of the friction that is generated from lapels to stick ourselves to his shoulder and neck. So no matter how hard he double unders us and tries to drive across our neck and finish the pass, it's going to be difficult. So here's how I'm going to do it. Go ahead and retract a little back to the double under. So I have the lapel and I'm lifting it high in the air like this, making sure it's up by his head. I don't keep it low. I put both hands on it like this. Now I'm going to do something kind of counterintuitive. I'm almost giving him the double under, but I'm bringing my leg in front of his head. So he's going to be driving through with his hand trying to cross my collar here like this. I'm actually going to keep my leg straight, but I've eliminated so much slack here, and my hamstring is going to be pretty strong that I can actually drive him away and down off of me without him being able to finish the pass. So the way this works is by making sure that all of this is caught extremely up into his armpit. And I'm wrapping it tight around my own thigh here. So you could just be chilling in double unders here all you want, and then when he tries to actually finish the pass, you engage the lapel wrench here. Notice how I've redirected his body to be perpendicular to mine. For him to pass, he wants to have his head near my head, stacked completely with his head about to, almost like he's going to kiss me. We don't want that. So I'm going to extend him away. I'm just extending my whole body straight, like this. Once it's straight, I'm just getting up to my elbow. I don't want him to cartwheel over me or do anything crazy, so I like to keep my elbow up on his hip. It looks just like an omoplata. Maybe you would call it a lapelloplata. I don't know. I'm here, like this. At any point, I can re-guard just by escaping my hips and facing him again. Boom, reset. Back to our position. We can get to our lasso, get to our foot underneath, whatever we want. So just be aware of that as you're trying to set up your positions and people start double undering you. If it's too loose, it's not going to work. If I'm loose like this, look, doesn't matter how straight I go, his head's too close to mine. I'm going to get stuck still. That would be embarrassing. So make sure you have this as a backup. Eliminate that slack. Pull it tight like this. And then as he tries to crumple you up, bring your foot in front of his face. You can even triangle your legs. And then I'm going to uncurl all this energy and drive his face away from me. Here. His arm's trapped, that's fine. I can get up, potentially even take his back if I escape properly here. So, you've turned his offense into your own offense just by redirecting his energy using a lapel concept that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do from the double unders. So that's a very tricky use of the lapel. Bonus points, there's actually a choke you can do from here. Should I do it in a separate video? No, just real quick. There's actually a real sneaky choke you can do where if I bring my leg across his body like this, here, there's actually almost like a gogoplata position. Or if I extend like this and grab my own foot, you can choke as well. But they most likely will completely disengage before you can do that, because whenever someone's shin starts going onto your neck, you're like, oh crap, I should probably not let that happen. So that's the lapel wrench as an opportunity to escape. without separating the video, you can do the exact same thing without the actual long lapel grip. You can do it with just the collar. So maybe he dives into a double under, but you can't actually get the lapel itself. Let's turn this way. Here. You're unable to get the lapel, and you just have this collar to work with. Get a really nice deep grip on this and turn it so your palm is up. If you leave it like this, it doesn't work because my wrist is flimsy and flexible and it'll actually bend and unfurl your own grip. So when you grip it, you have to get a little bit of slack so that you can turn your hand upward. Now, as he goes to stack me, I do the same thing, extend him away. Just make sure you have a strong grip on the collar. And then your two options would be to free your leg and come out like this, or just be here, escape, and re-guard back into the intermediary positions before setting up squid or X guard or anything like that. All right, by this time you're totally sick of double unders. This is the last thing, but it's one of the coolest submissions there is in jiu-jitsu and one of the sneakiest. I've tapped probably 20 or so people with this, and they just never learn. This is a move I learned from a judo Olympian. His name was Suldabayar Damdin, Mongolian guy. 3rd place, Athens, 2008. He's a beast. And he taught me this in 2011, and I've been using it ever since. So, the guy's double undered on you because he wants to avoid your lapels, but you can never truly avoid the lapels. So, this time, I'm going to be looking for collar grips here. Lower than normal. When you're defending double unders, most of the time people grip a little higher so they can keep the shoulders away. But I actually want him to be closer to me. So I'm going to grip lower, just below, I would say his jawline here. So I'm going to have my wrists at his jawline, but I want my thumbs to be right behind his ears. And I'm going to be putting the meat of my thumbs here, this part, on his carotid arteries. Now, this works because for someone to double under pass you, they usually need to drive their head forward and up. And the more he drives me up like this, the more his neck is exposed here. I'm going to be putting pressure on both sides of his neck. For him to avoid this choke, he has to tuck his chin and back away. So it serves two purposes. If he continues to try and pass my guard, I can choke him. And for him to avoid the choke itself, he has to not stop trying to pass my guard. So it's beneficial in both those ways. So let's say he doesn't know about the choke and he starts to drive into me. I'm putting pressure on the front of his collarbones so I can keep him away. Not because I want to keep him away, but because the push and pull reaction of humans, when I push, people like to push into that, right? So I push and he wants to resist that push, thinking that I want him away from me. As he drives into me, I'm going to do something tricky. I don't want to trap his neck. I want to be on the front of his neck, almost like I'm trying to get his esophagus at the front. And I want to connect my wrists together like this, like I'm trying to clamp my wrists together. I keep a tight grip on the lapels themselves, and I clamp my wrists together. Now, just my wrist isn't enough, so I reinforce those with my knees. So I cross my legs like a scissor lock around his head, and I'm going to squeeze everything together. Remember, not the sides of his neck, in the front. I want to be in front and pushing up. I barely squeeze that at all. If you have the positioning right, it's esophagus and carotid, so it's super painful and almost impossible to defend once you get your wrist underneath his jawline, because the pressure that I'm creating locks my hands underneath and behind his jawbones, and so if he tries to pull out, it locks him in there and then actually helps me squeeze tighter. So I won't squeeze super hard so I don't kill Miha, but I'm looking to go in front, connect my wrists in front, squeeze, and then my knuckles line up on behind each kneecap, or not my kneecap, the bone on the side of my knee here, so that they lock underneath that bone like that, and then I'm squeezing together. I rotate his collar in and out as well, so I'm pulling like the insides of it out, connecting my wrists, and then squeezing. And that's all I'm trying to do. So what it would look like is I'm here, squeezing, pushing. So I'm not pulling, I'm lifting and pushing and squeezing. You get super quick taps like this. Been doing that one since purple belt.
Super hard rolls right after because they're pissed off. They want to kill you.
Yeah. Or they're pretty lightheaded and they're just out. Because that's one of the chokes you don't want to tap to, because it's just so dumb. I mean, it's super smart, but it seems dumb when you get caught in it. Because all you had to do was tuck your chin.
When I was a blue belt, I got caught in one in competition, nearly died to get out.
Yeah. You got out though? Impressive.
Now we're going to talk about how to deal with someone who's dropping to their knees a lot. So one of the biggest issues that people find when they're trying to play lapel-based guards, worm guard or otherwise, is people tend to not want to engage in it because worm guard and squid guard are things that if someone engages into you, that is when it thrives. It's like been designed against like knee cuts and movement and aggressive passing. It's like that's what it counters. So people tend to like pull away from it and shy away from it because they're not really sure how to deal with the new positions. One of the main things they do is dropping to both knees, because if they can connect their heels to their butt and then put like heavy forward pressure with like straight arms, they can kind of effectively keep you from underhooking their legs or doing any of the setups that we cover. So one thing that really complements worm guard attacks and lapel guard attacks is having a really strong close guard game, because one of the weaknesses of putting both knees down on the mat is they can't really stop close guard. So the combat base, which you may have learned at your academy or wherever you train, is to put one knee up. And the reason they put one knee up is because you can connect your elbow to your knee, which protects you from close guard, because they can't close the guard around my knee and my elbow and my waist, and also protects you against triangles, because say Mihawk puts his combat base up and I want to shoot a triangle, I would have to get my thigh in between his arm and his knee to actually do my triangle. So the combat base is really effective at blocking that, and he can use his other hand to keep himself protected. So part of the reason the worm guard is really effective is because it works against combat base. If he puts his knee up, it's just as simple as me passing the lapel underneath his leg, and bam, we're in the super dominant worm guard position where you're almost guaranteed a sweep or some sort of attack. So when people put both knees down, it's not quite as simple for me to set up worm guard. If I try, he can just keep his butt flat and block my hand. There's not really option for me to just set up worm guard. Or even squid guard. Trying to underhook can be difficult if he's keeping my legs away, possibly holding my leg. I can't get my hand through underneath his butt to connect the guard. So having a really strong close guard game complements your worm guard and your squid guards and your various lapel guards. So look what happens when he has both knees down. I may not be able to do worm guard or squid guard, but I could have a really strong triangle attack because he's not effectively using his legs against me. So I can do things like collar sleeve or collar 2-on-1 triangles. I can set up omoplatas very easily, and then the easiest option is just literally to grab him and pull yourself into close guard. Now close guard sometimes can be viewed as a basic position, and a lot of people feel like they don't have a ton of attacks or they're not very good at being aggressive from here. Close guard is probably the best guard in jiu-jitsu just because it's the only one next to worm guard that there's no real counter attacks. So his only goal is to get out of my close guard. He can't really do anything until he gets out. If I keep my legs closed around him, I'm perfectly safe. The only thing that he could possibly try and do is finger locks and maybe like an Ezekiel choke or like one of these push chokes that don't really work if you have any sort of awareness around your neck. So making sure that you have a good fundamental close guard game and system of attacks here is really strong, which is the reason Gubber Guard exists. And we're going to go into Gubber Guard a little bit after I cover some more basic close guard attacks. Some that involve the lapel, some that don't. So we'll be covering the triangle setup first, and then we're going to go into a lapel-based version of it. So that was just sort of the introduction to what we're going to be doing next and explain a little bit about why you need to have a good close guard to deal with people who go on their knees. But there is also a lapel-based counter to this as well, which we're going to go into a little later. We're just still in the preemptive phase. We will be doing the triangle attack from a position where our opponent has both knees on the mat. You can do this from close guard or from open guard against their two knees on the mat. I would suggest trying to just get to close guard first because it's a little more secure of a position. But that's not the important part. The important part is the grip itself. Now, we're still going to be using the lapel. We can just assume that we were using the lapel, playing intermediary positions, trying to set up one of our guards, and he has both his knees on the mat. So I'm not able to actually do that. What's good is I'm not in too much danger here. Even if he just gets whatever grips he wants, he needs to step over one of my legs and pin it in some way. You can keep your knees on the mat, like If both knees are on the mat, he'd have to be like here and start to try and close distance like this. That's when you start to get in danger. But with the system that I'm teaching you, you should have your feet in positions where he can't really do that. So we have like a stirrup or both feet on either side of the lapel position here. That'll stop him from doing that. And if he wants to make any sort of aggressive movement, he has to stand up. In which case, you know what to do because we've spent hours covering every possible outcome to that situation. So you find yourself here, you find yourself with the lapel, but you can't get to your worm guard or squid guard or whatever. So I'm actually going to just pull myself to close guard. I'll just get a grip on his collar is usually a really good option. I'll keep the lapel because I'm going to use it in a second. I'm just going to scoot in and pull him into my close guard. If at any point he puts his knee up as I do that, because a good guy knows that close guard equals death. So if I try to go to scoot in and he puts his knee up, well, then you can just go straight to a worm guard. In this case, ringworm guard, I can go to reverse devil worm from here, whatever I want. So let's assume he really doesn't want to deal with worm guard and would rather deal with your close guard. So I'm going to get to close guard like this. Now I have to pick a side of his body to control here. The downside of close guard is there's not too many attacks I can do to his legs, so I'm going to have to ignore the 50% of the human body here. I'm only going to be attacking his upper body with this position. I'm going to utilize the lapel to create a really strong, secure grip that eliminates a lot of the fundamental weaknesses of a traditional 2-on-1 grip. So this is what a 2-on-1 grip looks like. Now, 2-on-1 grips are strong because it's both of my arms against one of his arms. Now, what I'm trying to do, the goal here is to separate his elbow from his body as much as possible when you have a 2-on-1. If he keeps his elbow low, like this, I don't really have many attack options. But if I can separate it a lot and really get a strong pull here, it allows me to start using my feet and elevating my hips and doing any sort of attack here, like omoplatas, triangles, things of that nature. The downside is most people have enough strength, especially at like brown belt level and above. They've adapted enough strength from doing jiu-jitsu for so long that they can keep their elbow pretty secure, especially from a closed guard position. And for me to separate it, I can't really do it from closed guard. I have to start making space and like stretching him out and using leverage with feet in the hip, using my other arm, and things of this nature here. Now, the problem with this too is that when he stands up, I don't have his lapel. So he may stand up to defend this position, I don't have the lapel, and then I find myself in the normal guard and I don't have my precious safety line of the lapel, okay? So I'm trying to make the system a closed circuit, so you never have to be in a position where you don't have the lapel if you don't want to. So instead of doing the traditional 2-on-1 grip for this, I'm going to do something that when he stands up to defend, I have such a secure grip that he can't really counter it with anything. So I've started doing this in the last year only, but it's incredibly powerful. And I found it helps me against those guys who are like absolute tanks. Like they just have strong upper bodies, they can keep everything in super tight, and you have difficulty stretching them out. So the grip itself is pretty simple, but you have to get it right. It's kind of like the Kimura grip. It can be confusing for beginners. So you're going to bring the lapel out underneath his arm, but I want it behind his elbow. You can't get it too low. It needs to be behind his elbow, up by his tricep area on this side. And I pass it from, if it's in my left hand, I pass it to my right hand. If it's already in my right hand, I'm just bringing it over here. Now I have to do one grip switch again. I'm bringing my hand across, and my palm is thumb down. So my hand's thumb down, my palm's facing him, and I grip it like here, bringing it across his arm. So you can see I'm kind of using the lapel as a replacement for my right hand that would normally be on his elbow when I do a 2-on-1. So this is now going to be on his elbow, and my right hand is going to come underneath and grip the lapel here. So instead of this grip here, which is pretty strong, but I don't have super strong pull. I can only really pull with this one down this way. I want his elbow coming this way, which I can only push with my right hand with the traditional grip. But by passing the lapel over like this, I have a pretty strong pull, and then I have the added benefit of creating a lever on his own lapel to help me lift his elbow up. So all I have to do is lift my elbow, and his elbow is going to follow, which you can't really do with any of the traditional 2-on-1 grips. So the grip itself is the trickiest part of the move. I just pass it over, and then I'm reaching underneath his elbow, and then gripping with my thumb facing him. My thumb is moving along the length of the lapel, so not like this. I want to be here. Now, if I leave his hand alone, he could just weave it out and untangle the whole position. So to truly lock it in, I have to grip his sleeve here. So I grip his sleeve as if it was a 2-on-1. So now he can't actually weave his hand out in any way. So from here I can control as much as I want. This is fine. Chances are he's going to try and stand up to escape my close guard. But I don't even need to worry about that. Even if he's stalling, like say he's just really staying in tight, keeping his elbows low, and doesn't really want to engage or do anything, or even try and disengage. This grip, because of the leverage I have, I can force him to have to do something. And all I'm going to do is put both my feet on his hips and start to extend him away. So I bring both my feet to his hips, like this, and I start to extend him away. So what you'll notice is I have a lot of control over the vertical movements of his arm. Left to right doesn't really matter, but because of this leverage I have underneath his elbow, I can really lift and twist. So what this is doing is it's separating his elbow from his knee so I can attack my triangle options very easily. But also, I have the opportunity to punch his elbow through to my armpit here so I can attack omoplatas. Okay? So now as he tries to stand up, because he realizes he's just so close to a triangle, I'm going to put my foot on his hip and I'm going to pull him away. Or I'm pulling his arm away from his body here. Now, you're not really going to be able to visually see the power that I'm generating here, but if you put someone in this position, you're going to feel the leverage I have. This lapel grip makes this position so strong. And the reason for that is the two attacks from here, the gruesome twosome of 2-on-1 submissions. The first one being the triangle. So of course I always want the triangle. The triangle is probably one of the best submissions in jiu-jitsu. If you can get the triangle, the person should be almost dead to rights. Now, everyone knows that. So he's going to fight to the death to not let me get the triangle. He's going to be keeping his other arm in, doing all sorts of things to stop me from doing that. And I have to be trying to shoot the triangle the whole time. Now, because he's so worried about the triangle, and because I have this lapel grip that allows me to lift his elbow and I can punch his arm through, the omoplata is an incredibly strong attack to go for it instead. So you're going to be using those two options based off of this singular grip. Now I'm going to show you a few details of how to set up the triangle and make sure your triangle is super tight. So let's turn this way a little. So once I have this grip itself, I need to have my right foot in his hip, extending him away as far as possible. The more I can break his posture, the harder it's going to be for him to get his knee underneath it and back inside. So he wants his right knee back in to try and get to like a knee pressure position and pop my foot off his hip. I'm controlling the lapel the whole time, and if I can make sure that I adjust my hips out to the side far enough, as he tries to get his knee in and continue to get it in, I can really stretch him out fully. Now you'll notice my elbow is pointed up. A lot of people make the mistake of keeping their elbow down and pulling like this. The problem with that is you don't actually get the full range of motion because your elbow hits the mat before you can actually get the leverage you need. So if I go here, my elbow hits the mat and I can't actually go any further. Now, the key to this is, like I said earlier, lifting the elbow is a very strong movement. It takes away a lot of his ability to defend. So I want to have my elbow pointed up and pulling away here. Now with my left foot, this is why the move is so strong. He has to control my leg to stop the triangle. If he doesn't do anything, he's going to get triangle. So he has to do something. Now all I do is if he grabs on the inside of my leg, I just bring my foot on the inside and then shoot through again to the triangle. So I'm here trying to shoot the triangle. He's defending. However, he can usually try to bring his arm in. I bring it in and reshoot. Continue trying to shoot the triangle. So people feel that they cannot defend the triangle, and then they quickly realize the issue for the reason they can't escape is my foot on their hip. So a lot of times they reach their foot or their hand down to my leg to punch it down to try and escape the position. So I actually want them to do that. That's my green light to attack from this position. When he goes to touch my leg, the second he touches my leg with his other hand, he's still completely vulnerable to the triangle. So it's kind of like a bait position. I bait him into touching my bottom leg. The second he does, I lift my hips and shoot my triangle. Now, when you lift your hips, make sure that you're posting off of your right foot. My right foot here on his hip, I'm using that to lift my hips in the air. That's my leverage point. I'm continuing to use this really strong pull, and I'm shooting the triangle. If he keeps his hand on the pants, I'm just bringing my foot on the inside and then shooting like this. So, a lot of the time when you're doing a 2-on-1 grip, now what's interesting about this
is I spoke earlier in the course about how I only have one attack to either side. When I do 2-on-1 with the lapel, I only do it on this side. But when I do 2-on-1 the conventional way, I only do it on this side. So depending on which arm is presented to me, I'll do a separate attack. Now, the problem with this is if he gets a super strong posture, like get your hips in low like this here, I don't actually have the control to lift his elbow. So his elbow is pinched down. I can be really strong, and if he doesn't have this grip, I may even be able to extend his arm, but I can't lift his elbow up into the air. I don't have any leverage there. So every sort of attack I do from here, I have to start doing other things like a shin to shin movement to disconnect his knee from his elbow, and then I have to reset the position and try and do it again, but I still can't lift his elbow, so if he has any manner of strength, he can sort of defend pretty easily here. So using the lapel is what changes everything, because now it doesn't matter where he goes, no matter how much pressure he puts in trying to keep his elbow down, I can easily just rotate my arm up to lift his arm, and that is what makes the position super strong. No matter how tight he stays, you can unfurl him just because of the mechanics of my leverage versus just what muscle are you engaging here to pull down? Your lat? He's trying to pull down with his lat muscle, and just his lat versus all of my upper body lifting and pulling, you're always going to overpower the person. So that's why using the lapel there is a better option in my opinion. So that's just how to set up the triangle from there.
We're going to show you another way to deal with 2 knees down. Now this is a position that leads into the Polish worm rider, which is a variation of some of the worm guards. Now, because the position is so tightly gripped, there's not a ton of options from it. It's super effective, but there's only really 2 main sweeps you're ever going to attempt from here. So I'm going to show them to you now. This is just another way you can deal with people countering the traditional worm guards. So I'm focusing a lot in this particular instruction on how to deal with counters and how to deal with issues that arise. We're still going to cover the worm guard positions, but for now I'm just going to show a lot of dealing with problems, like the problem solving aspect. So he's on 2 knees down, and I don't really have a lot of options to enter into the attack. So I'm having the lapel here like this. Now, one of the reasons 2 knees down works is he's doing a lot to try and keep my hips away from his hips, okay, without me letting me engage on the lapel in some way. So from here, we're actually going to lasso the lapel, because with a good strong lasso, you can really pull someone into you and start to set up other things, even if he keeps his knees down here. So if I just stay in the lasso and he keeps his knees down, what am I going to do? There's not that many options, right? Like, I'm holding myself to him, but I don't really have attacks. I'm not able to set up any submissions, and where are my sweep options? Here, like this. Well, I happen to have found a couple things you can do that are just going to force a movement out of him, one way or the other. Either he reacts and puts his knee up and allows me to set up a worm guard attack, or I get him into an even tighter closed guard attack system here, okay? So what I'm going to do, I get my lasso. You can do it either way. You can just bring your foot over the top and lasso through, but this usually results in a slightly shallower lasso. I prefer to shoot my foot through and pass it underneath to my left hand here, okay? Once I'm here and I have this foot super deep and locked in tight, I'm going to switch back to my right hand like this. Now, most of the time they're either going to have their hand on my hip or on my knee. One of these 2 things. Because if they're fighting me, they know I want to get under their leg, and most of what I do involves inverting through. So a lot of guys like to control my leg like this. But if he has his hand on my hip, that's fine too. But let's say he has his hand on his knee, because for guard players, this is probably the position you'll end up in more. I'm going to go for an overhook here, okay? So this position actually allows me to set up a very strong overhook control. How I do this, I'm just going to extend my leg away a little bit and use it to help me sit up. And as I sit up, I'm going to overhook his arm. So as I sit up, I'm gripping behind his elbow, and notice I don't just go straight over the arm. I want to go over the arm and then pull it towards me, so I pull his elbow upwards, really forcing his arm back, almost like in a Kimura motion here. If you just let him stay here and I overhook like this, he can just go to an underhook on me and potentially get a strong control, maybe put his knee up again and then get into a knee cut position, which I don't want. So I'm going to pull his elbow up before I get my overhook. Once I get the overhook, I'm going to pass the lapel to my free hand. So let's try and if you can get a shot of this here. I'm overhooking and gripping the lapel. I'm reaching over and grabbing the lapel here. This is the same lapel that I've lassoed. Okay, so it's an overhook control with a secondary grip. A lot of overhooks just have the overhook, but your hand is still in the air, not really gripping anything. By grabbing this lapel, it gives me extra leverage to keep this super tight, and then it transfers some of the weight that my leg is putting on the lapel. I have it in my hand, so now look, it's pulling my arm. And what that does is it allows me to have a very strong, heavy overhook. Because I have the weight of my leg involved to help me keep his posture down, and just the normal overhook control. Now from here, I'm not gonna go to close guard. I'm going to scoot my hips in and bring my knees over his back, like this, here. Now, for anyone that's ever been in this position, you know you're in for some trouble. His posture's broken, I have a super good angle to attack, and his arm is trapped. From here, I can do omoplatas, I can do wrist control triangles. I have a lot of different things I can do from here. So this is it's like a trade-off. Like, yeah, we couldn't get to the worm guard or a lapel-based guard, but just in his actions of trying to shut that down, he's exposed himself for a super strong overhook position, and then from there, doing sort of just submission movements basically can be super effective. We're not going to go over every single possible submission from these positions because you can find those elsewhere, such as KeenanOnline.com. We're focusing on just the lapel-based movements for now because that's what this whole DVD is about. But that's a super strong attack option. So I'm just going to show one more time. Here, lassoing, depending on where he grips. I play this from a seated position. I don't want to be laying back too much, just because I know I need to sit up anyways. Once I lasso the lapel against someone whose knees are on the mat, the chances are I'm going to do this attack with the overhook. So I usually like to just play seated from here. What can happen sometimes is the second I try and go for the overhook, he feels that this is dangerous for him. He's getting out of position pretty quickly. Most of the time they'll put the knee up. If he puts his knee up, I'm just switching from the overhook to just the basic worm guard setup. I would try an overhook, and then when he puts his knee up, I just pass it to worm guard. And then we have our worm guard attacks from here. This is the ringworm guard, but we could go to traditional worm guard as well. Or even reverse delta worm guard, which we haven't covered yet, but we will. Okay? Now we're going to go into a technique that's called the Polish worm rider. So this is a sort of niche movement. It's very effective to get a worm guard-esque grip from someone who has both their knees on the mat. So this was developed by someone in Poland. How do you pronounce his name? Mieszko. And he came to San Diego asking to do a private with me, and I did a private with him, and he paid me $200 just to show me this move, basically. Like, he just wanted my opinion on it, and I've added it into my game, and it's a really very effective movement. It's a very closed position, so there's not a lot of options from there, or at least not that I've figured out yet. So there's two main things that we're gonna do from there. So this is sort of like just an answer to people passing on their knees, which used to shut down the worm guard almost entirely, but now with this position and some of the two-on-one grips that I've come up with and started using, I feel like I want people to go on their knees against me now because these attacks are so effective. So we're gonna set it up. It's from the lapel lasso. His knees are gonna be on the mat, and I'm going to lasso his lapel. Lasso it however you want. I like to lasso this way. Now, this time, I'm gonna keep it in my left hand, and you keep your knee down for me. So, he's gonna be controlling my pants and trying to stay away from me in general. There's nothing he can really do to attack me here. Maybe if he was crazy, he could try and do a toe hold on my foot, but my toes are pointed the wrong way, so it's gonna be pretty hard. So what can he really do? He needs to keep his knees down, because if he puts his knee up in any way, I'm gonna put him in worm guard. And then we have a ton of attacks from there. So he's staying away. It's up to me to make the next move. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be pulling this lapel up, and I'm going to be bringing my hand underneath my leg, in between his legs here. So I'm reaching in between his legs, in between his closed, or his knees down legs here. So both knees are down. The only place I can really reach is straight in between. Trying to underhook on this side is not super effective, but what my friend showed me is that coming this way
you can actually get your hand underneath this far leg a little easier. And the way you do that is by pulling him with the lasso movement. The more I invert, the more it pulls his weight over my body. Which doesn't really make sense, but it works because my leg that's lassoed is pinned to his hip. And as I rotate my hips are actually moving away from him. And that's pulling my whole leg that's attached to his body. And then in turn is pulling his body up. And I hook here. So any movement that I cannot generate with just the rotation, I compensate for by pulling with my arm. And I'm hooking this like an overhook. Now, the lapel is going to be passed to my hand. The hand that I lassoed is just going to take, I'm going to take that lapel and pass it here. Now this grip from here, I can't really do the traditional worm guard attacks. I can't go to the deep De La Riva to take this back. So my options are a little limited. But there's one movement that is very powerful, and that's just to completely invert like I'm doing a Kiss of the Dragon sweep. So my left hand is going to go to his armpit to help me invert. It goes here and creates a hook underneath his armpit. From here, I invert and I pull his body over me until I end up here with control over his leg. I'm going to bring my bottom leg through, almost like a reverse single leg X. Now from this position, you can see it's pretty strong. All I really have to do is I could just turn him this way and start trying to tilt him over, but I actually prefer to stand up here. So I'm just going to let go of the lapel and hook his leg. Once I let go of the lapel, it just unwinds easily. I have this super strong position. His back is exposed, and I just do a technical get up. From here, I can reach the hip, start attacking the back, and throwing hooks in to take the back. Let's do it one more time. Now this works too if his knee is up. So even if his knee is up and you prefer to be the lasso kind of player from the worm guard, having his knee up is fine. You don't have to go straight to the normal worm guard from here. You can still do the Polish worm rider in the same way. I invert and grip. Once I'm here, my left hand goes behind his arm and I pull everything over me like this. My bottom leg needs to come through behind his other leg. Now I don't want to stay here too long because if he was really quick, he might be able to start attacking a knee bar on me. So the second I get through, I want to let go and start trying to hold this leg like this. From here, I'm freeing my leg. Where is he going to go? He can only really run away from me. He can't really turn to face me. So as he tries to run away, I need to hold on to this leg no matter where he goes and make sure I end up on top like that. So the motion is just inverting fully like a reverse De La Riva position. So if his leg is up, this would be a reverse De La Riva. Instead of underhooking here where normally you would go for reverse De La Riva, I'm just bringing it underneath like this. And instead of my shin being the rotational movement that pulls his body forward, it's my arm instead. But it's a very similar position because I end up here. The only difference is instead of having the leg on the outside, the leg is through, and I'm here. This can also be done against someone who's standing. Someone who has a lot of posture. Like, for instance, I had to fight Muhammad Ali yesterday, and I was trying to get my squid guard positions, and he was standing straight up, like this. And by standing straight up, he was making it harder for me to actually get my leverage to pull him over. Eventually, I ended up going to the calf slice, which we will be covering as an option in the squid guard section. But something I could have done, if I knew he was going to be posturing straight up, is I could have switched to a lasso grip instead. Because lassoing the lapel stops a lot of posture. Because now he has to carry my weight because of the friction behind my leg. It's just super strong. He has to lift my whole body up. And in this position, and from here, I could have gone to the Polish worm rider and then tilted him through and potentially got a sweep from here. So that's the Polish worm rider. That's really the main attack you're going to do from there. You can also kind of get to someone's back, which I'm going to show you next, but it's a little choppy. I used it at Worlds this year against Tim Spriggs, the next one I'm going to show.
Bardzo dobrze, Mieszko. Dziękuję.
Yes, what he said. Are you thanking him or what? Yeah, thanks for that. He really brought together a missing piece, a missing link of the worm guard system. Okay, this is the final Polish worm rider position we're going to be doing. Like I said, there's not a lot from it yet. It's just very effective, the 2 movements you can do. Kind of like reverse De La Riva, there's not that many movements you do from reverse De La Riva other than the sweep itself. So it is still a guard, yes, it's just there's not that many options. But this is a lot more powerful than reverse De La Riva, because once you get the grip, it's almost a guaranteed sweep if you do it correctly. Until someone figures it out, which no one's even figured out normal worm guard, so good luck with the Polish worm rider. Here we go. So this is the one I used against Tim Spriggs at Worlds this year. If you could pop this knee down for me. We're going to face it this way actually, because I'm going to attack it from this side here. So you have your lasso and you do the same entry like this, but now I'm going to focus more on the worm guard grip itself. So if you have enough slack here, you can actually, you see how I was gripping my arm, I just reach inside here to clear this, like this, here. And I'm actually going to start to try and come out to his back. So I'm going to sit up, and I'm going to start reaching around his hips, here. Once I get this deep underhook, I actually have to let go of the lapel, okay? In some cases, if he puts his knee up, his knee is up in the air a little bit more, I may be able to maintain the grip and try and get my deep lasso, or I'm sorry, the deep De La Riva. But even in this situation, I'm going to have to let go of this lapel at some point. But you may be able to sit up to this point here. This resembles more of the normal worm guard attacks, but from here I can't really continue to take his back. Because if I try and get this hook and come here, the grip starts to get a little weaker. So what I actually like to do is just try and reach to the far pants with my free hand. And once I have that grip, I let go of the lapel. And then my right hand that was on the lapel is just going to go to the pants on this side. Here. Like this. So from here, my foot is still over his knee. And in this situation, I can actually use that to pull him on top of me. Like this. And then start to try and take his back. Once I have him elevated into this first hook, I can let go of my hands and come here. So the grip is exactly the same, except instead of spinning under into that single leg position, you just treat it like a normal worm guard, back take situation, and you can grab both pants. In some situations, you can also just grab them and stand up as well. But don't get too focused on keeping that grip, especially from the Polish worm rider, because that's basically the end of the line as far as taking the back there with that specific grip. You have to switch.